This is Play-by-Playcast.
Is that faster than a Greyhound?
The podcast about play-by-play guys. For play-by-play guys, by, I'm told, a play-by-play guy.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Now here's the host of Play-by-Playcast, Tom Bodett. Wait, the Motel 6 guy?
We'll leave the light on for you.
No, Joel Godet.
Joe Godet.
Joel.
Joel?
Joel, with an L.
Okay, here's your host, Joel Godet.
Don't worry, nobody's listening anyway.
The 127th edition of Play-by-Playcast. Thanks as always for the subscribe, the stream, the download. However you're tuning into this podcast on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, anywhere else you find your podcast listening apparatuses. My name is Joel Godet, and this is the podcast about play-by-play broadcasters for play-by-play broadcasters, hosted by a play-by-play broadcaster. It's a professional development pod that dives into the tips, tricks, experience, process, stories, and preparations of some of the biggest and best play-by-play announcers in the business. You know, I always say that you can find the pod on social media, and you can, at PXPcast. You can find me at Joel Godet, JoelGodett, or you can email me, jgodett@bsu.edu. But at the same time, I haven't tweeted a lot lately. So I want to apologize for that up front, because it is like Mondo crazy season this time of year in college athletics in particular, when you get to crossover season. Once you get to midweek action, and really, if I stretch back before that, there's just been a lot going on. So I haven't been able to tweet and promote things as well as possible. The good news is you guys are still listening, and the numbers have still been good. So all's well. I think that ends well along those lines. But if you wanted to track us out on social media, my apologies. We have not been more present along those lines. If you are new to the podcast and you have not caught some of the more recent episodes, you can scroll back through our archives. All 126 previous episodes are free and at your fingertips. Last week with Tommy Galerder from FC Cincinnati, who talks about soccer play-by-play, but also, running your own production house and executive producing your own television broadcasts, and just how he became or will become the voice of an MLS franchise. Really cool, unique story. Bill Roth from ESPN, formerly Virginia Tech, the week before that. Andrew Monaco from Texas A&M, Dave Heinzeicher from Oklahoma State, and Mike Kelly from the Missouri Tigers are the most recent episodes that you can find. But here on episode number 127, we'll talk with Robert Portnoy. Since 2013, he has been the voice of the New Mexico Lobos, and before that was well-traveled throughout minor league baseball, eventually winding up as the number one voice of the Albuquerque Isotopes, a job that he took when Bob Socci departed and went east, first to the Norfolk Tides, and then eventually, of course, winding up with the New England Patriots as their NFL voice. Episode 8, I believe, if you want to scroll all the way back through to the beginning. But Robert Portnoy was a veteran of minor league baseball, the Indianapolis Indians and the Kinston Indians. No relation. Didn't even think of that until right now. And also the Huntsville Stars throughout his travels. But worked his way up through the minor league ranks, happened to take him to New Mexico. One thing led to another, and he's now the Division I voice of New Mexico's team. I believe he calls it like the UCLA of New Mexico. Later in the episode, we're going to cover a lot of ground though today. How he got to where he got, the career he had before he got into broadcasting, what he looks for in a broadcast. A lot of our staple hallmark topics of discussion will come up with Robert Portnoy today, and we'll talk about calling games from the pit. Fun conversation. Wonky at times. I learned a lot. Hopefully you guys do as well. We start the conversation with Robert Portnoy on his job before becoming a broadcaster, because he is not the first pro athlete to have ever been on this podcast, but I'm like 97% sure he is the first pro golfer to have ever been on this podcast. That's where we're going to start this week with Robert Portnoy, our guest on episode 127 of Play-by-Playcast.
Yeah, there was a period of time after I graduated from college where I played mini tour golf. I definitely maximized my ability. I at one time was a scratch player, but I was never anywhere good enough to make the tour, but yeah, I played mini tours in California, and it was a blast, man. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I competed against some guys who, ended up making the PGA Tour, and saw what that kind of golf looked like, and my body broke down too. I definitely reached my ceiling, and it was something that was an unbelievable experience.
Have you ever broadcast golf since then?
No, I haven't. That would be fun, though.
I was going to say, is that a bucket list thing?
Yeah. Yeah, nobody's ever put it to me like that, but yes. I mean, if you throw that into the bucket list of broadcaster bucket list items, doing a big league game, that kind of thing, absolutely. Calling, like a golf major or something, that would be amazing.
What did you want to be growing up? I mean, was that something where it was like, I'm going to pursue a sports track early in life, or when did broadcasting come in, or was it like, hey, when toying around with this failed out, it was time to go get a real job, and 20 years later, here you are?
I think, like a lot of kids, I mean, when I was little, my heroes were my favorite athletes, and I wanted to be one. I think most of us who end up doing this for a living, either played it or loved it when they were kids. And I played all the sports and loved them all when I was a kid. And but in actual fact, I probably had an idea, even when I didn't know what I was doing, that maybe that wasn't the road that would end up happening, because even when I was a little kid, I would broadcast games. I mean, one of my best buddies and I, and actually he's my oldest friend in the world. We've known each other since kindergarten. When we were little kids, with an old cassette deck, we used to hit record, and we'd write down, our favorite all-star teams from any sport you could imagine, and literally just mock up games. Like sometimes we'd call games that we were watching on the screen, like we'd turn the sound out on the television, but we had much more fun just making stuff up. And literally sometimes we would play Legends games, our favorite all-time players. And I literally have been doing this since my love of sports, kind of formed. And that was when I was really little. So
would you sit there and broadcast them to yourselves, or like, was it
absolutely?
Was it playing in the backyard and calling it while you did that, or was it literally sitting there like broadcasting mock Legends games?
Broadcasting mock both current and legend games. Like we'd pick all the favorite guys from our favorite teams, and then we'd pick some of the other individual players that we liked the most, and we lay out a lineup if it was baseball or whatever we were doing, and we would literally record it. And one of the most incredible moments that I've had with that friend, and really just ever, I mean, regarding this, is finding a box that had a tape that we had done of one of these games when we literally were like third or fourth graders, and listening to that, and we just laughed our, it's one of those things where, you'd love to put it out there, but it's so ridiculous and so stupid and so silly. But I guess it's funny to have, dreamt about something or doing something like that so long ago. And then, here, I mean, my office is the Pit. My office is University Stadium. My office is Santa Ana Star Field. So it's pretty cool. I get to do all the sports I love, and they actually write a check. So
I was going to ask if those tapes existed, but I guess that answers that question. What was that like when you found it? It's like, I imagine it's a little bit like what happens when, like the universities will, they'll take artifacts from a time period, right? And then they'll dig a hole in the ground, and they'll stick it in the ground, and they'll cover it up, and they'll put a plaque over it, and then 50 or 100 years later, they'll pull it out. And that's really what it was like. It was like finding a time capsule and going back in time, and just, I felt like I was 5 years old again. So you're from Southern California when you were 5 years old.
Yes.
And I know that Vin Scully and Dick Enberg were the voices of your childhood. beyond the obvious of just how great those guys were, and the fact that they were the ones most readily available at your fingertips, what did you like about them, and what endeared you, not just to listening to them, but that made you want to be them when you were a kid?
How lucky to have just been in an area of the country where I got to sort of learn what this whole thing was about from two of the greatest of all time, right? I mean, you just randomly could be dropped into, any time zone anywhere in the world, and you're sort of a little bit locked into those that are close by, right? Like you turn on the radio, and those are the stations that I could pick up, and it's two of the greatest of all time, literally. And that's like the stroke of good fortune there is unbelievable. But the vivid detail of the pictures that they painted, is one of the things that stood out unbelievably about them. I mean, how much they made it feel like you were right there, and that's one of the greatest compliments that a broadcaster can ever receive. And when you get one, sort of, unsolicited from a fan, that they say, I felt like I was there. That's one that makes you feel great. And so that's something that they both had in common, that they did unbelievably well. But looking back on it, the thing that drew me to them and made me think, gosh, this is so fun, how cool is this, is the connection that they made me feel to the people that they were talking about. I mean, I think that's what separates the really good broadcasters from the legends, is the ones that can humanize the players and make it more than just about statistics and numbers, and really can get you to where you feel like you and connect with the athletes and the people that we idolize so much, certainly as kids. I mean, you look at those athletes like they're larger than life, and they became my friends. They became my buddies. So I thought, right, because of Vin Scully and because of Dick Enberg and the way that they could weave stories about these guys and insights into their personalities and things, that they could put those into the broadcast, without disrupting the action, but just make it so personal. That's what I liked the most.
When you left minor league baseball, you were the Dodgers AAA voice. So did you ever get a chance to meet Vin?
Yes. Yeah, no, definitely one of the highlights. It was 2008. We were at spring training at Camelback Ranch, and I got to talk with him for a few minutes. And it just he's everything that you would expect him to be when you meet him in person. And the thing that struck me the most is just how genuine he is, and how eager he was to ask questions about the people around him that he was meeting for the first time. I think that's always the thing, people who achieve that level of success in anything and reach a level of fame and notoriety, the ones that when, they look at you and they look you in the eye, and you can tell that they're actually listening to what you're saying and they're processing it. And then they ask a follow-up question, and it's not about them all the time. And when, it certainly could become that because of the adulation and adoration that surround them. They're the truly special ones that remain special people despite all of that. And he's clearly that, because you could tell that he, how did you get here? Why did you pick this? And it's just really cool, really cool. He's an unbelievable guy, just from a short, few minutes that I had to spend with him, that everybody talks about. It was obvious.
Well, let's talk about what he and I guess those guys did so well too. And when you talk about humanizing athletes, it's easier in baseball, obviously, just because of the pace of play, and it lends itself to telling stories. But how do you work those humanizing characteristics and being able to talk about the people into something like basketball or football, which are just so much more geared to, in a lot of ways, making us more robotic because we've just got to worry about down distance, time, score, where the ball is on the court?
Such a great question, a question that is asked so infrequently. Honestly, it's the challenge. It's the number one challenge of those two sports, and the number of hours that I am fortunate to get to spend with these athletes over the course of the seasons that I'm with them, and you generate so much. And what I try to do is have something new, just a little nugget, something different, something fresh, if I can, about each guy. Because a football game, you only get 12 of those, and in a basketball, you're lucky if you get 35 of those, right? And so, just something new, something different that maybe the fans haven't heard about that person or that player or that coach, and try to keep it fresh, because you got to get in and out. You got to leave space for your color man. The next play is coming. The continuous action in basketball, it's incredible. It's really hard to weave a tapestry of stories and vignettes into those broadcasts. But, again, it's the same type of thing, though. It's like the compliments that you cherish, the things that you hear from people that matter the most, like to hear colleagues. Like we had he's a great journalist here in Albuquerque. His name is Scott Stigler. He has a talk show on KKOB, which is our 50,000 watt talk monster here in Albuquerque. It's a nationally renowned station, like others of its ilk, grand old stations that you can hear cross state lines, and it's been like that forever. And there are a few of them, still around doing their thing. And he used to be our sideline guy. And, he once said that you inspire me to want to be at more practices and be around guys more, because it never ceases to amaze me how you'll drop something in about somebody, and I think, how did he get that? How did he know that? And those are the things that's why I do it. I mean, if the single thing that I miss the most about the 144 game grind of a AAA season is spending 5 months with those people and those players and getting connected to them and learning who they are and what they're about and being able to convey their stories. That, I get that. Don't get me wrong. I still get it. It's awesome, but it's not as intense. These seasons are so much shorter and it happens so much quicker. And I'm in and out of football in, 3 months, and then it's basketball. And then as soon as February hits, the baseball season starts, and it's just boom, 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 boom. And luckily, a lot of them stay 3 or 4 years, right? So you can get to know them over a course of time, but it's not always the case. And that's the connection that I had with those guys, and feeling, the trust that you gain with them, so that they share stuff that's truly meaningful. That's what I miss most about it. And that's the thing I still like most about my job. It's, being able to do that with these kids. Now they're 18 to 22. Some of them were older in AAA for sure. But it's the same, whether it's a college basketball player, a college football player, a college baseball player. That's the stuff that matters to me most.
So here's a question we haven't asked on this podcast in a while, based off of that, is how do you hang around as much as you want and get the information that you want that helps paint the best picture that you can, while seeming like a human and not seeming like you're there to get information? Because to some extent you are, but to another extent you don't want to seem like you're just like mooching for knowledge off of these people for no other reason than to retell it on the air.
I think the most important part of that is being around them enough to where they don't see you as an outsider, so that when you ask the questions like that, they're comfortable that you will present everything in an appropriate way, and that they will share it with you, and that they know will be used well. And so you have to be around them enough when you're not asking them questions and you're just engaging them in the same way that you would engage anybody else, whether it be an acquaintance, a friend, a coworker, or whatever, so that when those things come up, then they're very comfortable that you will do the right thing with those, pieces of information. For example, we have a football player on our team currently, Teton Saltis is his name, and he's an unbelievable story in a lot of different ways. He's a Lakota Sioux Native American from South Dakota, found his way to Albuquerque, incredible high school athlete here in Albuquerque, and now he is the starting right tackle for local football. And there are a lot of, I mean, I think he's going to change things for the Native American community in his hometown, and I think he's going to do it probably nationally too. He wants to go to law school. He wants to change tribal law, things like this. He's really a forward-thinking kid. But at some point, he got comfortable enough with me to share his mom's cancer story with me, and it's incredible. I mean, she was found to have an inoperable brain tumor, and they said it was, 90 whatever percent that she would die from this. That would be the end of her life. And she refused all conventional medical treatment for that and went back to her community and got with a medicine man. And the way he tells the story is unbelievable. I mean, they do all sorts of ceremonies and rituals within their culture. There's a deal where he literally goes for 4 days without food and water at the top of a mountain in very harsh weather conditions, freezing cold, survives that as a sacrifice for her. He's basically sacrificing of himself for her.
Wow.
While he's doing that, she is gathering herbs and spices and things from the land in their, on their reservation and gathering that and creating medicines, not just for her, but they believe in their culture will help her heal, but will help heal others in the community too. She does that for 4 full days. And he told her once the whole, over a 2-week period, I guess, this whole thing was complete. He said, the next time you go in, they're going to do their scans, and the doctor's going to walk into the room after they've read the scans and say, we don't know what happened. We don't understand it. We've never seen anything like it, but there's no tumor. And that's exactly what happened. Like exactly what happened. And she's been cancer free ever since. So, a true miracle story. And they just don't throw that out there until they're comfortable doing that. And now, we've had him on the radio. It's awesome. And that's the stuff that makes you feel really good.
That's incredible.
Yep. Yeah.
I don't know how to transition from that. Let's if we can go from the I guess the story side of things to the nuts and bolts side of things of play-by-play.
Yeah.
And I'm curious most in this time of year where we do the crossovers with football and basketball. I feel like, and this is just my own personal side, I feel like I am more at ease in a basketball game and I can have a better flow. And I'm not sure why that is, but when I listen to my football, I feel like I'm more up all the time. And finding a way to draw that back in kind of your pre-snap setup and, make a 1-yard run sound like a 1-yard run, make a 50-yard run sound like a 50-yard run. How do you control your temperament, so to speak, when you're broadcasting football and have that kind of on-off switch from out-of-play to in-play moments?
Boy, that's another really good question. I almost – it's funny. I feel like I started where you are, and then I learned the skill that you're talking about, and it will happen. That will happen. You will find that, and I'm sure you already have to a certain degree, and you're probably wanting to improve on it. And I feel like I've almost gone too far the other way, and that sometimes now when I air check my football, I listen to it and I think there's too big a separation now between the general flow of the game and like you were talking about, the 2 yards in a cloud of dust play, where it's much more of a stock level of enthusiasm to the big play. And I'll never forget, this is going way back now, Joel. This is when I was broadcasting in Kinston, North Carolina, the historic Ranger Stadium, the Kinston Indians at the time.
Phenomenal press box. Phenomenal press box.
Unbelievable. That's where I learned how to broadcast baseball, by the way, in this way, as a tangent. And this is what happens with broadcasters, stories. It's ridiculous. But so here it is. I'll mix a story. I'll answer your question eventually somehow.
Sure.
But this story is so good. So you mentioned the press box at Granger. it's tucked under the overhang, right? It's way up at the top of the seating bowl and tucked underneath the overhang. Well, I realized immediately that as soon as the ball's hit in the air, you can't see it. It's out of your view because it's up above the ceiling. It's above your head and above the overhang, and you have no shot. And that's when I learned to track the outfielders and track the umpire to give me the answers to the questions that I would have at the end of a ball in play, because you can't see it at all sometimes. Yeah. And by the end of my first season there, I felt like I had it. And in getting a couple of months under my belt before my first year in Kinston, they hosted the Carolina League, California League All-Star game. And Kinston had a player named Billy Munoz who hit a walk-off game-winning home run in the All-Star game for the Carolina League at our park that summer. And that's exactly what happened. And Elpidio Guzman was the name of the center fielder, and I remember calling his name and tracking him to the wall and seeing him leap and seeing the ball go over that brick wall and losing my mind as our player hit the game-winning home run in that All-Star game in my first full season in baseball. And I was ready for that because of the overhang and because of the 2 months or whatever, 2.5 months before the All-Star game leading up to that. And it's like that. Now your eyes move back and forth as a broadcaster. Now your eyes move back and forth. You find the ball, you look for the fielder, then the umpire's going to come into play when the ball gets near the wall. All those things, and Granger taught me that. Granger absolutely taught me that. Crazy that just came to my mind, but that's if you're talking about nuts and bolts and mechanics and things like that, that's exactly what you're describing. But it was a home run hit by a player named Corey Erickson, a second baseman for the Indians, who had just remarkable power. And it was one of those deals, and this is back to your original question now, that as I was air checking, I'm like, oh my gosh. And I shared it with one of my mentors at the time, and he's like, oh yeah. And he could hit the most ridiculous, no doubt, home runs, like where it's off the bat, there's no question. And I think that's kind of where I have a couple of calls that I like to use on home runs that are gone. And one of them is how far is this one going to go, or where is this one going to land? And he hit him like that for some reason. He had sort of Popeye forearms, and he could do it. And there was one where it was here's the pitch, and then and the level of the volume change from the pitch to him touching it off, there was no buildup. There's got to be buildup. And I think that's the thing. That's the thing, even today, what I struggle with, what you struggle with, what we all struggle with, is finding that perfect pitch where you have buildup from the sort of standard starting volume level and excitement level to, okay, now it's got to gradually climb so that the listener is ready when you get to the crescendo, that it's not jarring and it's not like, oh my God, they want to turn the radio down, or you've gone over the top. And that's how you just find it. You're working toward it. And I still look for it. We all do.
The wild thing with football, I feel like in particular though, is that you've always got, it's this feeling that literally anything can happen on the snap of the football. And it's different in basketball. Nobody's going to shoot it unless there's 2 seconds left in the game from full court. But in football, right, they can literally take that shot at any point in time. And it's finding the way to get yourself out of this heightened state of awareness, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
I know. Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying. And if you're not in that heightened state of awareness, then you're not ready for it when it happens.
Yeah.
You have to have that heightened state of awareness without being overly excited, right? It's like a weird dichotomy. But just this past weekend, we had a nearly 300-pound defensive lineman take a scoop and score for 44 yards. And it's one of those ridiculous plays that happens maybe once in a career, or, once every 5 or 10 years, right? I mean, he said he's been waiting his whole life for it. And I've never called that play before, where a 300-pound defensive lineman scoops and scores from 44 yards. And there's a moment in the middle of the play where the quarterback is rolling out and being pushed to the sideline for so long that you can hear in my voice that I'm almost trying to figure out how to carry this call still. Like, there's got to be resolution here. And then it just completely comes out of nowhere at the sideline where a guy hits him just as he's about to throw the ball. Is it a pass? Is it a fumble? It doesn't bounce out of bounds miraculously, and it literally bounces up right into the chest of a guy who's wearing number 95, and he looks around and he's like, there's nobody here, and he rumbles 44 yards. I mean, it's one of those, it's crazy. So you have to have that heightened state of awareness to be ready. But yes, if you're too pumped on every play, then it does sound a little put on. Yeah, that's fair to say.
What's most important to you in and beyond, time, score, down distance, those types of things? Most important to you when you turn on a football broadcast and then a basketball broadcast that tells you this guy knows what he's doing and this is going to be a really interesting listen?
Well, the most important thing when I flip it on, I think I'll go back to something we started with. It's
that humanizing.
Well, that I think that's a little less predictable. Like it's especially if it's tight and there's a high level of excitement and all of that, then you're not going to get that part of it. You might, but you don't know when it's coming. So then if you're just talking about the physical, like you were saying earlier, the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah.
I come back to the thing we started with in terms of the details in the picture. There are guys that are now so skilled at it that sometimes, you might even look at it and go, or listen to it and go, that's over the top. Like, the fewer words in the smaller spaces kind of axiom that we've all heard at some point, I think, saying more with less kind of is still 100% true, but it's the ones who can do that and still get you the vivid detail. I think Kevin Harlan is unbelievable in the way that he can give you a maximum amount of detail, particularly in calling football. The way he calls a punt, the way he calls a kickoff, these unbelievable little details, things that you notice, but you would never think to put into your call of that play. And he does. And it's like, wow, that's pretty cool. Those are the things. Okay. Now he's grabbed me. Now let me see what he does with a 55-yard, pass between Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. I bet that's going to be really impressive. Right. So from that standpoint, I love that. John Miller is a baseball broadcaster who is able to do that. And I think in my later years, as I was getting into the profession, and he was the play-by-play guy for the San Francisco Giants, and I was an undergraduate student at Stanford, and listening to him do games and his ability to describe every last detail of a play and sort of keep it in real time somehow is incredible. And I think that I've tried to incorporate some of that into what I do. It's funny how what you do is a sort of a hodgepodge mix of all the best things that you can think of, over time. Now that you look back on it, the guys that you've listened to and grown up with, the storytelling, picture painting from Enberg and Scully, and then the incredible detail that John Miller can put into, backhand play in the hole between short and third that gets a guy by a step at first base, and how he's able to describe it. So yeah, I think that's the thing. If you're just talking about the nuts and bolts of it, it's the guys that they put me right in the stands, and I'm seeing the play, and I can see every little piece of it.
Do you like being? Do you enjoy the role as the voice of an FBS program? And how does that compare and contrast with where you were for so long in minor league baseball and reaching the AAA level and being involved with the Isotopes as you were?
This is
not to demean one over the other, but
right. No, 100%. Gosh, there is a passionate group of fans that are Isotope fans and that are following the team and are engaged. And, these are the ones that anybody who's worked minor league baseball, they know these fans so well. They've got books full of baseball cards. They're around getting signatures from coaches who used to be old players. They've got the rookie cards of all the prospects. They love it, and they're the ones that come up to you and they'll say thank you, for getting me, close to player X or whatever like that, things like that through the broadcast. And that part of it is unbelievable. But there's a part of the minor league baseball experience it's just entertainment based, right? I mean, the fans, the stands are full at Isotopes Park with a core of season ticket holders and fans who, want to know the final score. But there's a majority of them that are there for an experience, and it's not as much about passionate winning and losing, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing about being the voice of a Division I athletic program, is that and to be so lucky to be the voice of this program where the fans are so passionate, because this is the Pittsburgh Steelers of Albuquerque. This is the Los Angeles Dodgers of Albuquerque. I mean, the Lobos are it. And they live and die with every minute of every basketball game, like nothing I've ever seen. And the only thing that a broadcaster can hope for is to have the people that are following that team and listening to your work be passionate and care as much as these fans do. And that's both good and bad, right? They're on it when it's not good, and they are totally behind it when it is good. And that's all you can hope for. And I love it. I mean, that's what makes this job unbelievable.
Yeah, how's calling a game at the Pit?
Nothing like I've ever experienced before. I mean, my first year doing Lobo basketball is the best experience I've ever had in broadcasting. The Lobos won the Mountain West Tournament Championship in Vegas that year, beat rival San Diego State in the final, and I still got photos on my phone, and I go back to them to make myself smile every now and again of that court being filled with cherry and silver people. And it was like, we'd won the national championship, and literally the stands that day at the Thomas and Mack in Vegas, there were between 11 and 12,000, literally 11 and 12,000 Lobo fans. That's how this team travels when it goes to Vegas for the tournament. And, that first season in New Mexico actually went right down to the very end, the last weekend of the regular season, in terms of the regular season title with San Diego State. Lost a heartbreaking game on the road to them to lose a regular season championship, and then got revenge in the tournament. But basically every game that season was packed to the rafters, and this place is just absurd. When 15-4-11 are in here and they're engaged and the team is winning, there's nothing else like it. I mean, it's legendary for a reason. It has an international reputation because of it, and it's something to behold. There's no doubt.
What else do you do? What's your full? Is it just calling games, or how else do you occupy your time outside of the trampoline park too?
Well, yeah. I mean, no. I mean, I'm full time with the Lobos. I get 2 months off in the summer. But yeah,
that's not a bad
I go
deal.
right from no. It's I go right from football to basketball to baseball, and then if baseball carries into June, then I work till mid-June, and if baseball's finished at the end of May, then that's once football goes back to training camp, I'm back full time. But they have me do a lot of things. UNM does. I MC banquets for them. I've spoken to a broadcasting class before. Do all kinds of voiceovers for them, and things that I'm sure many broadcasters do in their at their schools. But yeah, the trampoline park is, that's the other piece of it, and it's my wife's baby. But I'm always available, and I help out wherever I can. So,
well, Robert, how do people track you down if they want to hear the Lobos, or follow you on social media, things of that nature?
Yeah, so my Twitter account is @RobTalksLobos, and I try to have as much fun with it as I can. @RobTalksLobos, and then and you know what? Everything I post on Twitter goes straight to my Facebook page too, so you can find me there. And then golobos.com is our website, and if you go to the schedule page of any of our sports, whether it's football or men's basketball or baseball, the three that I do, there'll always be a link right there next to the game on game day, and they can click that link and listen in from anywhere you can get a connection.
All right, that's Robert Portnoy joining us here on Play-by-Playcast of the New Mexico Lobos. If I can go back to the wonky part of the pod and end on a postscript with that, one of the things I've been working on myself, football season-wise this year, is separation of play-by-action voice and non-action voice. And being able to have a more calm demeanor during pre-snap play setup and 2 and 3 yard runs, and then obviously, you hit a certain high on a 50-yard run, but even kind of bringing myself down more on the more mundane, so that it's just an easier listen, I think would be the best way to describe it. That's been my focal point that I've worked on a lot this season. We all listen to our stuff back, and we draw out things that we want to work on at every level. Kevin Harlan will do it after Monday Night Football games. He reviews everything he does. My big thing has been that, and it was interesting to hear Robert's perspective on that, and kind of working yourself to be reserved yet prepared is probably the best way to encapsulate that. Just reserved yet prepared for that big moment to strike, and at the same time not catch you off guard. If you want to get involved on social media this week, tweet us the things that you've been working on. We can maybe create some conversation that way as well. Things that have been your bugaboos this year, things that you have worked to improve on, or things that you have struggled with that you're looking for solutions for. If you want an answer about something that's bothered you, A, maybe we can ask it on a future upcoming episode of the podcast, or B, we can just talk about it as a community on Twitter as well. Next week's guest is Jordan Burnfield, who does play-by-play for like everyone. He'll be doing the Ball State Purdue men's basketball game Saturday night in West Lafayette. Jordan and I went to college together. Yes, I know you're going to have another Syracuse guest. I promise we'll try not to talk about it, because we'll talk about some other things with Jordan, and hit some different notes that I think you guys will enjoy. That is next week's episode. Many thanks to Robert Portnoy. Looking forward to Jordan's conversation next week. And again, send us those tweets at PXPcast or hit me up directly at Joel Godet. They're playing the music, which means we are out, so I will see you next week from Charleston, South Carolina. Heading on the road for a basketball tournament. We'll have some guests, hopefully, coming out of that as well. In the meantime, so long. This is Play-by-Playcast. My name's Joel Godet, and we are out.
And that will do it from St. Louis, where the score is inconclusive.